Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Wrestling Discussions. On today's episode, we're going to be diving in straight away, talking about last night's AEW Dynamite, as well as, some thoughts and feelings on Impact Wrestling and what we might potentially see tonight. I don't really know many of the match card for this evening's Impact Wrestling, but I do know kind of like the plan around what we might be seeing in the near future. For wrestlers such as Steve Maclin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll go down the list and get to that eventually. But for now, let's start with last night's AEW. Now, I had a lot to say on yesterday's episode, splitting my time from between both NXT as well as AEW. And, well, the conversation with AEW last night, I think everyone can agree, was a little lengthy, and I dived into quite a few things. But nonetheless, we're going to try and dive into as much as we can in tonight's episode discussing what we saw last night. Now, again, I'm not caught up in AEW, so this is results I'm seeing from different from highlights and such. So I don't know the full I don't know the full highlights. I don't know every segment that happened. I don't know everything that happened. I don't know everything down to the last minute detail. So, try not to judge too hard. And if you do, I really don't care. Alright, so our first match, we have Adam Cole, Bandito, Orange Cassidy, and Roderick Strong taking on the Jericho Appreciation Society, a team consisting of Cool Hand Angelo Parker, Red Death, Daniel Garcia, Jake Hager, and Daddy Magic Matt Menard. And, well, I had said it's pretty obvious that, or at least in my opinion, I think Adam Cole, Bandito, Orange Cassidy, and Strong should win, considering Roderick Strong's first match in AEW, his first match in general in over a few months, and just something that I think is very important that Roderick Strong kind of comes out strong on, no pun intended. But nonetheless, I was correct. Not correct, but because again, I don't really do predictions anymore. I more so just give thoughts and opinions if you didn't catch that in yesterday's episode. But I was correct, I guess you could say, in saying that I think it would be more logical for Strong to win, because that is what happened. Adam Cole, Bandito, Orange Cassidy, and Roderick Strong picking up the victory, which I think is really, I think it's very good that that happened, because again, Roderick Strong is really going to benefit from this, because I think this could put him into some singles rivalry with maybe another smaller member of the Jericho Appreciation Society, such as maybe Jake Hager or Daniel Garcia. And same could be said for Adam Cole, because this is most likely going to boost him into a match with Chris Jericho at Double or Nothing. Now, moving on, we also, obviously, I'm not going to really dive into many different segments and such. It does seem as though Moxley and Omega may square off in a steel cage match, which has never been seen before between the two. We've seen these two square off one-on-one multiple times, especially when it comes to extreme stuff, non-sanctioned matches, lights-out matches, title matches, barbed wire matches, etc., etc., etc. A steel cage match, I don't know if that necessarily is going to hit different, or if it's more so just going to be a little bit of a letdown. But nonetheless, I mean, we'll get what we'll get. I mean, Jon Moxley is entertaining as hell in his form of wrestling, especially when you pile on the violence. And so I can only assume that his match is going to go crazy. And I can only assume that Kenny Omega, with his in-ring capability, on top of that, he is very good at kind of adding a bit of violence and stuff to that as well. I think it'll ease out very well. I just don't know if it'll top their other matches that they've had in the past. Now, this next match I'm going to talk about. This is a match that I was excited for, because like I said, I'm a huge Willow Nightingale fan, but nonetheless, I do still think Saraya deserves this win. Saraya has to have this win because, again, she's a legend. She's been in this business a lot longer than Willow Nightingale. Maybe if it was 2 years down the line, like I said in yesterday's episode, maybe then I'd be a little more okay with Willow getting the win. But right now, it's just not her time. It just doesn't make sense. Saraya is in a much better opportune storyline right now than that of Willow Nightingale. It makes much more sense for Saraya to move on and keep trajecting herself forward rather than downward. And if you haven't guessed the match I'm talking about already, it's Saraya versus Willow Nightingale. And again, I really do believe that Saraya deserves this win. And I'm glad that she got it. She won via pinfall with her captured DDT, and nonetheless, I really like how Saraya and Ruby Soho and even Tony Storm, they all mesh very well. I feel like all three of those women have come together and really made something of themselves, and they've really formed a bond that I haven't seen all the time with some people in the locker room. There's what's nice is the fact that AEW is acknowledging that these are former WWE wrestlers. They are the outcasts. These are people that were brought in from the other company. They're not AEW originals. And I think that's really something cool, because this is something that MJF had mentioned before. Tony Khan keeps bringing in all these unoriginals. He keeps bringing in all these WWE superstars, and he can't pay his originals what they're owed, what they deserve. And when you look at guys like Bryan Danielson or CM Punk or Jon Moxley, look at where they are on the totem pole, and look at guys like Jungle Boy and Sammy Guevara and Darby Allin, who are just starting to get on that totem pole. It's something where you look at it and you go, wow, this is something we really need to work on and we really need to improve. And it's a really interesting way of saying, hey, Tony Khan has former WWE superstars, and then he has his AEW original talent. And now he's finally giving a damn about the original talent by making their voices heard and giving them something with a group of unoriginals from AEW, and that is these so-called outcasts, which I think makes for great television, because it gives you another aspect, if you will. Because it gives you the idea of, like, hey, Saraya's from WWE, Tony Storm's from WWE, Ruby Soho's from WWE, and now they're feuding with all originals. I don't know if this reminds you of anything, but to me, it reminds me of when we were potentially going to get a Four Horsewomen versus Four Horsemen match, which never happened. Now, moving on, we also got the return of Hikaru Shida. Now, I am not a major Hikaru Shida fan, but nonetheless, I'm very pleased with her in-ring capability. She is a former AEW Women's Champion, and if she ever were to become two-time AEW Women's Champion, I do think the time would be soon. And I do think if anyone were to become a two-time AEW Women's Champion, if not Rio, I think Hikaru Shida would make a great two-time AEW Women's Champion, because I think the most, in my personal opinion, I think the most relevant Shida has ever been in her entire career has been with that AEW Women's Championship, at least on AEW, that is. And that's simply because she's really good with that belt. That belt gives her charisma, and it gives her a style that I don't think it's really given any other wrestler. I mean, we've seen what it's done for Jamie Hayter's career, and Jamie Hayter has taken that belt and completely blasted off into a whole nother universe, a whole nother reality. And same could be said for, wrestlers such as even Rio, because Rio, at one point, I don't know if she was ever really considered as AEW Women's World Champion. And look what that did for her. And same with Nyla Rose. Wrestlers that I think didn't really need it, probably wrestlers like Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa, because those are the girls that kind of took that belt and they still did the same old shtick. That belt was more so something that was meant to reward them rather than build them. Whereas Jamie Hayter, she took that belt and really used that to blast off. Same as Hikaru Shida. And same as, when Tony Storm won the interim women's title. It's just something that these women have been able to take and use it to build their career, whereas Britt and Thunder had built their careers to the point where they didn't have to do that. And that's why, when it comes to Shida, I think she's really good with that women's world title. And so if they ever want to give that back to her, I think they should do it shortly and have her fight Hayter. Now, we also have the Tres de Mayo Trios Battle Royal. Now, again, I can only assume that this is a Battle Royal that is going to... I guess it's a Battle Royal that is going to decide who's going to fight, who's going to fight the House of Black. And, Daddy Ass and the Acclaimed won. Now, I don't know if you're thinking what I'm thinking, but Daddy S and the House of Black, that's pure comedy gold right there, because I don't know, just the idea of having the Acclaimed and the House of Black in the same ring, I feel like would make for not just an entertaining match, but like not just wrestling wise, but just the amount of ways they can do their entrance and their rapping and their their in like their little taunts and stuff. I think they can just make a full on entertaining thing out of this, both with wrestling and with their gimmick. Both gimmicks, both sides of things. And I think that's really going to benefit them in the long run, because even if the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass don't at least I'm assuming that's what this is going to do. That's going to push them towards a match with the House of Black for the AEW World Trios Championships. And even if, say they don't, Daddy S and the Acclaimed have been built up for so long that they're really just kind of good where they are. I mean, it's every wrestler's goal to keep going, keep growing, keep achieving. But nonetheless, they're in a pretty good spot right now. They're getting weekly Dynamites. They've kind of moved off from Rampage for a little bit. They're in a good place, and that's something that not all wrestlers are in right now in AEW. And it's not to say they're in a bad place, it's to say that there's a lot of wrestlers that Tony Khan has that he just doesn't know what to do with. Now, we also had Logan Easton LaRoe versus Wardlow. I didn't know this match was scheduled. Again, it looks like they've been kind of just putting Wardlow against a bunch of people. Well, Wardlow obviously won very easily, very quickly. That's to be expected. I'm not really gonna move on much with that, but again, we have been seeing a little bit with Christian Cage and Luchasaurus, which I think, again, entertaining. Luchasaurus and Christian Cage are in a great position right now. Luchasaurus especially, because him versus Wardlow, I think, would make for a great entertaining match. And I do feel as though that they've been building up Luchasaurus for a little while to hold gold. But again, it has to make sense. And I don't know if he's ready to beat a guy like Wardlow yet. Now, we also saw Juice Robinson versus Ricky Starks. Now, again, this is a match I talked long and hard about yesterday. It was a match that I had said could go either way. It was a match that I had said was obviously going to be hard to kind of figure out, and Ricky Starks did get the victory. Now, this is something else I had expected. Jay White attacking him from behind, and this is something that I can only assume is going to lead into a match at Double or Nothing, or maybe even later on down the line. Jay White versus Ricky Starks, and this is another great match for Ricky, because win or lose, it's the same as when he fought Chris Jericho. Because when he fought Chris Jericho, he was set. He was fighting a legend, and this dude is what, in his 20s? Maybe early 30s? Ricky Starks is in a prime position of his career right now. And now he's fighting a guy like Switchblade Jay White, who's new to AEW, so it would make more sense for Jay to win. But it's an honor, in my opinion, that Ricky Starks is being built up. And then he's going to kind of put Jay over, and then going to kind of maybe go into a funk, maybe fall in and out of it a little bit, find himself along the way. Because he's in a mixture right now, if you will. He fought MJF, lost, moved on, beat Chris Jericho at a pay-per-view, and now he's kind of lost because he's fighting Juice Robinson, and then he's got Jay White, and he doesn't know where he's going to end up, what he's going to do. And so it makes for good story, in my opinion. I'm not someone to compliment Tony Khan very often, but I do see Tony Khan's vision right now, and I do think that this makes sense, at least to me. Now, finally, Darby Allin and Jungle Boy versus MJF and Sammy Guevara. Now, if you haven't seen my channel before, well, hi, welcome, you're new here. Nice to meet you, and by the way, I am a major MJF fan, so regardless of win or lose, I can already tell you MJF's going to make this match entertaining as hell, whether it's through his incredible in-ring wrestling style, whether it's with his incredible taunting, his promo work, whatever. This dude is immaculate in that ring. He's just hands down entertaining. And, well, it's like I said, it would make more sense for Darby and Jungle Boy to win this, simply because I think everyone saw from the moment that these four stepped in the same ring, like a month ago, that there was going to be a fatal four-way for the AEW World Championship. And I was correct. Darby Allin and Jungle Boy did get the win. and it's going to be a fatal four-way at about at Double or Nothing, and that's huge. That really is huge because I can only imagine what that's going to mean for a number of different things, because first of all, again, like I said, MJF, he's defended his belt a few times. He fought Ricky Starks, then he fought Konosuke Takeshita, then he fought Bryan Danielson in an Iron Man match, 60 minutes, and now he's fighting in a fatal four-way. This guy keeps leveling up in his title defenses, and whether it's cheating, whether it's not cheating. Listen, people say all the time, oh, MJF cheats all the time, or, he barely wrestles. Yes, to both of those things, yes. And am I saying that MJF... Look, there are people out there that do put in more work than MJF. I'm not saying that. There are people out there that deserve more opportunities than than what they're getting, and MJF is getting the opportunities that they deserve. I will agree to that somewhat. But even, people that hate MJF have to agree that this is a guy that is hands down someone that really gets wrestling to the point where if he wasn't given the AEW World Championship, there'd be no point. Because he's just too damn good, and you have to give him his moment, you have to let him shine, even if it's only for a little bit, even if it's for a long while, even if it's only for a short while, whatever, you have to give him his moment, because he's just that big. Now, moving on to Impact Wrestling. Now, as far as I know, we still have Steve Maclin taking on PCO later down the line for the Impact World Championship. Now, Steve Maclin did beat Kushida for the Impact World Championship, and as far as I remember, he has claimed that he's only fighting, and I quote, Canadian wrestlers, PCO being one of them. That could go a number of different ways. Obviously, I don't see PCO getting the victory. I don't necessarily see... I think a lot of people might think, oh, well, Eddie Kingston's going to get involved. Sorry, not Eddie Kingston. Damn it, I meant Eddie Edwards. I apologize. He might say, like, some people might think, oh, Eddie Edwards is getting involved. But there's also a lot of people that have said Eddie Edwards and PCO's rivalry needs to be done and buried. And so hopefully that's not the case. But nonetheless, this idea with PCO and Steve Maclin, I think that's great because I think PCO has deserved and has earned himself a title shot at some point. And so I'm glad to see him in this position. Now, this is just an idea. I don't believe he's Canadian, but I would personally love to see Steve Maclin versus Jonathan Gresham. And I say that because these guys fought before for the Ring of Honor World Championship down in Impact Wrestling. And we saw an impressive match between both of them. And we saw a match where Steve Maclin really got to kind of prove himself. He really got to kind of show up and show out for a little. I'd love to see a rematch, and I'd love to see Steve Maclin actually get the victory this time. Now, that being said, as far as I know, Trey Miguel is still the X Division champion. He successfully defended against Jonathan Gresham and Speedball Mike Bailey. I honestly don't know who it's going to be that's going to take the X Division title off of damn it, I can't think of it. Off of Trey Miguel. What I do know is obviously you have Nick Aldis, who's currently returned to Impact Wrestling, newly returned, I should say, and I can only imagine that he is going to have some sort of way to get to the Impact World's title, whether it's after Steve Maclin loses it or whether it's before, because it's like what Scott D'Amore said. Steve Maclin is trying to dodge Nick Aldis, right? He's trying to avoid Nick Aldis by using this idea of only fighting Canadian wrestlers. But you could also say, well, what if Nick Aldis wins the X Division Championship? What if Nick Aldis cashes in option C? That's something that's huge. Or better yet, what if Trey Miguel cashes in option C? Because Trey Miguel and Steve Maclin, they have history, they have a feud, they have a rivalry. And so that would be huge. That would be something to look at and go, well, what are we going to get from this? What's going to be next from here? On top of that, you have Chris and Bay, who I forget what tag team they took on last week. That Chris and Bay taking on the Design, taking on I believe it was, I don't even remember their names, but I think it was Alan Angels and something called, but nonetheless, pretty much, it was the design versus the Impact World Tag Team Champions Chris and Bay, who, in my opinion, I haven't really had a chance to get to talk much about them, but they've been on fire, and their matches with the Motor City Machine Guns have been some of my absolute favorites. I'm really proud of Ace and Bay right now. I'm really proud of their incredible tag team um, chemistry and maneuverability. They are really great as a team. And whoever decided to make them both members of the Bullet Club and put them both in this idea of like, hey, they're gonna go and they're gonna fight as one, as a unit, and they're gonna become Impact World Tag Team Champions. Whoever kind of finally decided that really knew what they were doing, because these guys, honestly, this is what is finally kind of pushing them to a really good level in their careers right now. Now, we also saw Sami Callihan attack Diener. Now, I haven't really fully. I've had some blanks with Impact Wrestling, so I don't know where exactly Sami Callihan and the design kind of fell apart. But nonetheless, I'm really glad to see Sami Callihan as a babyface again. See him on the side of against the design, and I'm just a big I'm a very big Sami Callihan fan ever since his match with Kenny Omega, and so I'm really just excited to see him on TV, and I'm excited to see what he's got going on with the design here. Now, on top of that, Deonna Purrazzo, it seems as though she's had some unlikely adversaries as of late. It also seems as though, Jordan Grace has, kind of renewed a new rivalry, or renewed a rivalry with, I forget her name. I believe it's, I completely forget the name. I apologize. But nonetheless, I think that's huge for both Jordan Grace and Deonna Purrazzo, because Jordan Grace is by far one of the faces of the Impact Knockouts division currently, as is Deonna Purrazzo. I mean, Deonna Purrazzo, from the minute I kind of started getting into Impact Wrestling, she was the Knockouts champion. And she was someone that really paved the way, because she really proved herself in that ring. And she's done that with a lot of wrestlers. She's done that with women like that of Charlotte Flair, or I'm sorry. I mean, she's proven herself to be on the same level as women like that of Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch and others. And I really do feel as though she's the top dog of Impact Wrestling, just like people might say Britt Baker's the top dog of AEW, or Charlotte Flair's the top dog of WWE, or Becky Lynch, or whoever you want to name. I think Deonna Purrazzo is by far the head of the Knockouts, with or without that title. But all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to, kind of conclude, where I'm going with things. Because, I don't really know the match card for Impact. I'm just kind of giving some thoughts and opinions on where things might go. And those were my thoughts on the AEW results. So if you guys have any comments or questions or whatnot, feel free to let them down below. And if you don't, then just don't say anything at all. But, ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.